You're announcing the extension of your energy price cap to off-grid homes today. What are off-grid homes and how would that work in practice?
Off-grid homes are homes that don't use the grid to get their energy, so they're getting it in other forms, oil very often. Often in rural communities, and there's over 2 million households that get their energy in that way. And our plan, which is to freeze energy prices this autumn so that people aren't subjected to huge increases in their bills, applies across the board. So what we've said is whether you're on-grid or off-grid, you should come within our scheme, which is very straightforward, very basic, which is freeze energy prices this autumn. Pay for that in part by a windfall tax on oil and gas companies that are making huge profits. And that deals with the spiralling costs for energy that people are facing. But it also, by making it across the board, off-grid, on-grid, and to all households, means that we can bring inflation down by 4%. So it answers the question, what are you going to do to help people with their bills this autumn and into the early part of next year? And we say we'll help them by freezing them. But it also answers the question, what are you going to do about inflation? And as we see the inflation figures going up yet again today, to have a scheme which brings them down by 4% answers that question as well.
We'll come into your plan in just a moment, but firstly, you are, of course, a constituency MP. You must be seeing in your own constituency some of the problems people are facing already. How worried are you about what we could face this winter? How bad a situation do you think is coming down the tracks?
Oh, I'm really worried about this. Very often politicians will say everybody you meet is talking about one thing, and there's a scepticism about that. But I can tell you almost everybody is talking about the bills that they can't afford to pay. Their prices are going through the roof, whether it's fuel, whether it's food, or whether it's energy bills. Their wages have been stagnant and in real terms probably going down. And so there's a real cost of living crisis. Now, energy bills are a real driver of this because inflation, of course, is going up and up and up. And that's why I think it's important that we get a grip of those energy bills. And the prices that are going up when the energy price cap changes are huge. So, average households' bills of, at the moment, about £1,900, going up to £3,500 in October, and then up to £4,200 in the early part of next year. And a number of people have said to me, Keir, why have you made your scheme a universal scheme? It applies to everyone. And the answer to that is I think that many, many families and households will say, well, I may not be the hardest up, but they are huge hikes in my energy bills and I can't afford it. So Labour's given a very straightforward approach, which is freeze those bills, have a windfall tax on oil and gas companies to help pay for it, and have a measure to bring down inflation as well.
You would accept, though, that while your plan would help millions of people, including those who aren't typically those the most struggling, it would also benefit people who don't need the support of taxpayers' money. It would benefit multi-millionaire businesses. It would benefit Premier League footballers. Is that not a waste of taxpayers' money? Surely there's a way to target it better than this plan would.
Well, I think, one, if it's universal, it brings down inflation by 4%. And that is really important in its own right. Secondly, I think there's an assumption that I challenge, which is that most households can suck up these kind of increases, when I don't think that they can. Some maybe can afford it without a second look, but many millions of households will be saying, look, I may not be the hardest up, but, a price hike of £3,500 for my energy bills going up to over £4,000. I think there'll be many, many people listening and saying, wow, I'm going to really struggle to pay that kind of increase. And therefore, I think it's really important that it's universal. And that's actually a benefit of our scheme, that it's universal.
This is going to cost £29 billion for the next 6 months. It freezes energy prices until next April or so. Very few people expect that the price of international wholesale energy is going to have come down significantly by then. In reality, you would have to extend it if you were in power by at least another 6 months, wouldn't you?
Well, look, we'll have to see what the situation is in April. Before we announced this scheme, I made sure that we had all the accurate forecasts for this autumn going into January of next year. Have to wait till April to see what the forecasts are for next summer. But look, I accept the challenge that what we need in addition are medium and long-term answers to the energy issue, the energy crisis that we're facing. That's why nearly a year ago now, I was saying we should have a scheme to insulate homes, because millions of homes, millions of households are paying for energy to heat their houses, and that's all being lost, or a lot of it's being lost because they're not properly insulated. We've called for a scheme to deal with that. Had the government taken us up on that, by now 2 million houses would have had that insulation in place. So I renew that challenge to the government, get on with the insulation. But at the same time, of course, we've got to go much faster on other forms of energy, because we're very exposed to the international market at the moment. If we went faster on wind power, on solar power, on tidal power, then we would be less reliant. And again, my challenge to the government is get on with it. Same with hydrogen power and with new nuclear. So, yes, I accept that the medium and long-term questions need to be answered as well, which is why a year ago I put that challenge up for the government. I renew that challenge now. Get on with insulating houses, get on with turbocharging our progress on other forms of energy so we're less reliant on the international market.
Staying with the short term, there is another crisis here which your plan doesn't directly address, and that is the crisis facing small business owners. Your plan to freeze energy price cap benefits households. Small business owners are ringing us every single day saying we are struggling, we're going to have to lay off staff, our customers don't have the spending power they're used to, redundancies are coming down the line, how am I going to keep my business afloat? Your plan doesn't help them, so how would you help them?
Well, within our plan, we did make provision for small businesses. We said that the way that we would help them is to reduce the thresholds for paying of business rates, which many of them are struggling with. So we would reduce that. We also, within the plan, said we need to deal with those businesses that are heavily reliant on energy, intensive energy, and their bills have gone through the roof. So we've said that we would have a plan to reduce the business rates, to give support for those that are particularly reliant or intense on energy. That would cost about £2.1 billion, and we would pay for that through digital services tax. So we recognise that freezing the price cap doesn't affect businesses directly, and that's why we had these other provisions, particularly for small businesses.
Would you accept, with respect, Sir Keir, that's not enough? These businesses are facing thousands and thousands of pounds of increases in their energy bills. Business rate relief is welcome, but it is not enough to help some of these companies stay afloat this winter. You would need to go further if you were in government.
Well, look, if we were in government, we would go further, because we want to abolish business rates altogether and replace them with a much fairer system with a level playing field. But most of the small businesses that I've been talking to in the last few days have welcomed the fact that we have included within our plan a scheme for small businesses, and welcomed the reduction of the threshold for their business rates, which is they really do struggle with.
Some people would say your plan does more to help Premier League footballers than it does small business owners in terms of the savings that they will see on their energy prices. Is that criticism fair?
No, I don't think it is. Our scheme covers all small businesses across the whole United Kingdom. And as I've been engaging with small businesses intensely in the last few weeks, and particularly yesterday when I was in the West Country, and they are very pleased to hear the Labour Party say, we haven't left you out of the scheme, we've provided for you in this way with business rates. They're very receptive to our argument that business rates should be abolished altogether. So we've included them quite rightly in the scheme, but the basic scheme is to freeze those energy costs, which will help millions of households and help bring inflation down, which of course is very important for small businesses as well.
We've been talking about the problems that people, households and businesses are facing this winter. At the same time, some of the energy giants are making multi-billion-pound profits. I know that's in part why you want to extend the windfall tax. Do you think it's ethical the way they're behaving, putting up bills to the extent they are while making £9-10 billion profits in the case of companies like BP and Shell? Is that ethical?
I don't think we can go on like this with huge profits for oil and gas companies in the North Sea, whilst millions of families are suffering. And that's why, in a sense, we've got a basic choice. We can allow that to continue. Oil and gas companies making huge amounts of money while millions of households are really struggling to pay their bills, or we can do something about it.
But are the companies themselves behaving ethically, in your view?
Well, look, they are making profits they didn't anticipate, that they didn't think they would make. That's actually because of the global price that's gone up. So this is not a reflection on the extra work that they've put in. they've already budgeted for the profits they thought they would make and the investment they need to put back in. I completely accept that. What we're targeting is the overall profit, which includes those excess profits that they didn't expect to make, they didn't budget for. I actually think that a windfall tax is hugely popular because people can see that where you've made profit you didn't expect to make because the global market price is so high, it's right to use a tax on that to ensure that millions of households don't face the increase in their bills they will otherwise face.
I wanted to ask you about another proposal that's been put forward. This is by one of your predecessors, Gordon Brown. He wants some energy companies to be taken to be nationalised, potentially temporarily, if they can't afford to absorb the losses that would come with freezing the price cap. What part of his plan did you think was the wrong approach? Why were you against that proposal?
When we were putting together our plan, we worked on this for the last 2 months. I wanted to ensure that the energy costs, the prices and the bills for households didn't go up. I wanted them to be frozen. And therefore we had a basic choice that we had to make, which is, do we use the money that we will put behind this to reduce those prices, those bills, or do we use it for other things? And I took the view that every single penny under our scheme should go to reducing the prices of household bills by freezing them. If you go down the nationalisation route, that means using money to pay shareholders because nationalising a company doesn't come for free. And I think if I'd made an announcement this week to millions of households, said the way I'm going to deal with this winter is to pay money to shareholders to nationalise the company, but not do anything to reduce your bill, they would have said to me, Keir, you don't recognise the extent to which we're struggling with our bills. So I've taken the decision, the political decision, that every single penny under our scheme should go to reducing bills, not paying off shareholders through nationalisation.
Just finally, last question, and you've got to go, Sir Keir. A lot of professions are balloting or threatening to go on strike this summer, because this winter, because of the increases in costs combined, of course, with a real terms cut of 3% we see in wages yesterday. Why is it so difficult for you as Labour leader to say that you want nurses, police officers, doctors, teachers to get a pay rise in real terms?
It isn't difficult at all, and I completely understand the difficult circumstances in which they are surviving at the moment, with real wages going down, with inflation up, prices up. I completely understand why there is talk of industrial action, there are negotiations, why there are strikes going on. The single most effective thing I can do to help anybody in that situation, and I completely sympathise with the situation that they're in, is to have a Labour government, and that is what I'm utterly focused on. A Labour government would come in, would ensure that those negotiations were conducted properly and successfully, but it would do much more than that, because we're committed to things like employment rights legislation within the first 100 days of a Labour government that would actually be a massive step forward for working people and all the people that are struggling.
But some of these workers, they don't feel like you're on their side.
Well, look, we're absolutely on their side. We absolutely support working people in whatever sector they're in, understand just how difficult things are just at the moment. Our proposal to freeze energy prices will affect every single one of them, because it will freeze their bills this autumn. It will also bring down inflation, which is a massive driver of the negotiations, the wage negotiations are going on at the moment. But the most effective thing that I can do is make sure that we have a change of government, and that we have a Labour government.